carols are such an amazing uniter of people. I have to tell you that this Thursday, I went, which I usually do on the first Thursday of the month, went out to Barton Woods. Julie Fund and I went out there to Barton Woods to do a service. The Methodists get the first Thursday of the month out at that nursing home. And what we do is we usually sing some songs. Well, Julie sings some songs and I read some scriptures for them. Well, we went this Thursday and we did some Christmas carols. I have to tell you, I wish every single month was Christmas, because these residents sang at the top of their lungs when we had Christmas carols. Oh my goodness, one man absolutely beamed every time we started one. Oh, he would just get so excited and sing them out. There is something about Christmas carols that just bring people together. It fills your heart with memory and joy of this time of year. And so that's what we're doing here in worship. We are focusing on a few Christmas carols this season. Today we're focusing on Hark the Herald Angels Sing. This Christmas carol that we just sang is one written by Charles Wesley. Charles Wesley is the brother of John Wesley. John Wesley is the founder of the Methodist Church. And what was interesting was that John and Charles Wesley, when they went out to preach the good news, they didn't mean to go out to start a church. They just wanted to preach the good news to the common people. And these common people didn't know a whole lot of theology. They didn't have the opportunity to go to Bible studies or to even have a Bible. Their church would not offer them a Bible like we do today for our fourth graders. It wouldn't be like that. And a lot of them couldn't read. So where they learned theology was from songs. And Charles Wesley would write songs that talked about the way in which we think about God. This song, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, we have been singing for so many years, and it tells the very basis of our Christian faith. But here's the problem with this carol. It's written with some big words in some Old English. And as you were singing that, you might go, you know what? I don't really understand what that song is about, because you don't quite speak the way they used to speak back then. So what I want to do is we're going to go through each of the 3 verses, and I'm going to tell a little bit about what each one means. And they are the basis of the Christian faith. They will give you so much information. And unlike last week, if you were here last week for O Come Emmanuel, I gave a challenge that anyone who did not learn even one thing from the sermon could come up and I would give them a prize. Now, I was a little bit cocky about this. I didn't even have a prize to give to anybody who would come up, because I knew that you would know there would be some little tidbit that you didn't know that you would learn from the sermon. Well, I am not making that same claim today. My hope is that these words will be something that you've heard before, that you go, oh, that's what it is, and that's what I remember, and they will ring in your ears with a familiar tone. And so we're going to go through each one and see what it says to us today, and how this theology of Jesus Christ changes and transforms our life. So the first verse, Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. God and sinner reconcile. That's the part I want us to think about. That God and sinner reconcile. What does it mean to reconcile? When 2 parties are at opposite ends, then they are not together. They're not reconciled. And this is God, and this is man, humankind. We're not together. You see, sin separates us from holy God. God is pure and holy. And what happens is, sin comes and drives a wedge between God, holy God, and us, who are full always follow the way of God. That's sin. And it separates us. And so we need to be reconciled, to come together. When two people are reconciled, it means a relationship is restored. To make new or whole again. That's what to be reconciled is, to come together, to restore a relationship. Well, you see, we can't restore a relationship with a holy God. We're the ones who have offended God with sin. And so God makes a way for us to have all of that wiped out through Jesus, who pays for our sin. Jesus pays the price for our sin with his free gift of grace. Say you have over $100,000 in debt from a credit card company, and by some miracle they call you up and they say, I know you have $100,000 worth of debt from us, but here's what we're going to do. We're just going to cancel that debt, and you don't have to pay it back at all, ever. No interest, nothing. Oh, I see some smiling faces. They're like, oh man, this is good. You have been forgiven a debt. And that's exactly what God does through Jesus Christ. Jesus pays the price for our sins, and we are reconciled. God and sinner reconciled, coming together again. It's a free gift of grace, and all we have to do is accept that free gift of grace. Let's look at verse 2. Verse 2 is veiled in flesh, the Godhead see. Hail incarnate deity. Like, okay, what in the world is that one about? That one might be a little like, oh, I sing that all the time. I don't even know what that is. Veiled in flesh. The incarnation, that word, it means God coming down in the flesh. God is Jesus. Jesus is God. Jesus is 100% God. Jesus is 100% man. And how does that happen? What does that mean? God comes down in the flesh as Jesus. Incarnate deity. A deity is God. God in the flesh. Jesus, our Emmanuel, which means God with us. Jesus is there. Well, this is hard for us to understand about the incarnation, right? And I make a promise. I believe in making G-rated sermons. That's what I preach. I preach G-rated. So I'm going to talk very carefully at this particular moment. And we're going to talk about Mary, who was not with a man, not ever with a man. And God came down and made a baby. And people say, well, that can't be. She needed a man in order to make a baby. And I say, the creator of life, of the universe, of the world, can make a baby in a virgin's womb without the help of Joseph. The incarnation, fully God, fully man. That's Jesus. But you may say, well, why? Why does Jesus have to come down? Why does God have to be here? Why is there an incarnation? I don't understand. Let me share a story with you. This story is attributed to Paul Harvey. He's on the radio and told stories, and if you know the rest of the story. Well, this story is attributed to him. It is about a good and decent man, but this good and decent man was not a hypocrite, and he would not go to church with his family on Christmas Eve. He said, I just don't believe in that incarnation stuff, God coming down to earth. I don't believe in it, and I refuse to go to church. And so his family went off to church, to the midnight Christmas Eve service, and he stayed home reading his paper by the fire. A storm began to brew, and the wind and the snow began to fall. And all of a sudden, he heard a thud on his window, and then another thud, and then another thud. And he thought, well, someone throwing snowballs at the window. He went out to investigate, and he found a flock of birds caught in a storm. He in his coat, and he trudged his way through the snow out to his barn. He opened up the barn doors and lit a light where it was warm and safe, and he thought the birds should go in there. But the birds didn't understand. They wouldn't go into this barn. And so he went back into the house and he got some breadcrumbs and he tried to entice them with breadcrumbs into the barn. But the birds didn't go, and they were confused and frightened because of the storm. And so he went out and he tried to shoo them into the barn, but the more he started flapping his arms and shooing them in, the more the birds got frightened and they were terrified of him. He looked like a strange creature to them, and they wouldn't go into the barn. And the man thought to himself, if only I could be a bird. I could show them the way into the safe, warm barn. And as he thought that, the bells of the church rang, and he sank to his knees in the snow, and he understood the incarnation. God with us, Emmanuel, God in the flesh. The final verse is one that maybe gives us the most trouble. This one, we might think, I don't understand this verse at all. So we're going to go through it a little bit. This is the Son of Righteousness. It says, the Son of Righteousness. Now, I have to tell you that I cannot spell at all. I am the worst speller in the world. You might not be able to spell, but I'm worse than you are. I am. And I have trouble with writing down the correct spelling for words. But oftentimes, this Son, S-U-N, in this song, some people think that the song was misspelled, and it's S-O-N, Son of Righteousness, which would seem to make sense, right? He's the Son of God, which would be the Son of Righteousness. He's all righteousness. That would seem to make sense. But it's not Son, S-O-N. It truly is Son, S-U-N. And you have to understand where that comes from. Because it's the Son of Righteousness, risen with healing in his wings. You're like, well, what in the world? Well, all of a sudden, where are the wings from? And what's that all about? Well, it comes from the book of Malachi. The book of Malachi in the 4th chapter. Now, the Old Testament has everything to do with the New Testament. It does. The Old Testament tells us that there is a coming Messiah. It gives the prophecy that there will be one who will come to save us, that we are in need of a Messiah. So all of the Old Testament points to Jesus, to the New Testament. And here, in the book of Malachi, an Old Testament book, it shows us what Jesus is all about. He is the Son of Righteousness. Malachi, chapter 4, verse 2, says that all who love and obey him, he will be the Son of Righteousness with healing in his wings. And they will go out with joy like a calf, leaping out from a stall. That verse right there, talking about the warmth of Christ's love, like the sun, that gives us healing. That is what Christ does for us. We live in a sin-sick world. Death and sin have pushed us down and broken us. But Christ, he gives us healing. Raised us from this earth, born to give us second birth. Because Jesus died on the cross, paid our price, took all of our sins on him, and then rose again on the 3rd day, risen with healing in his wings. We get to have everlasting life. Everlasting life. We get to have a second birth. Born that we no more may die. We don't have to die anymore. Now we will have to leave this world. Our precious Floyd Campbell, who I was so excited that he got a going away party from us here, and he went to live with his son out west. But he left this earth. We will all have to leave this earth. But the great part about it is that we no more may die. Born to raise us from this earth, born to give us second birth. With Jesus Christ, He heals us, and we get to live forever with Him. I love that image that the verse in Malachi gives us. That it will be like a calf, released from its stall. Can you just see this calf jumping around, frolicking around in the field? That is how it should make you feel when you have the life that Jesus gives to you. He is the light and life. That's what the verse says, the light and life. That's what He gives to each one of us. There's a great darkness. It says in Isaiah, there's great darkness. He is the light of the world. He gives us the light and the life. Born that we no more may die. That should cause us to leap like a calf out of his stall. It should cause us to go and to share the news of Jesus Christ. So you look at this song and you say, oh, it's a lovely Christmas song, but it's so much more. It has the very center, the core of our Christian faith, that Jesus is God, that Jesus came down to earth, veiled in flesh that God had seen, veiled incarnate deity, that He would reconcile us sinners to Himself so that we have life and life and healing, and we no more may die. That's what He gives to us today. It is the true meaning of this Christmas season. And as you hear this song played in your homes or in the grocery store or out and about, you hear this, you know, this is what it means. This is what Christmas is all about. Jesus, our Emmanuel, God with us, reconciling Himself to us, giving us life